Welcome to the September 2019 public hearing and meeting of the Village of Ostend Zoning Board of Appeals. Please remember, when you speak, you are addressing the board. Do not have conversations with anyone else in the room. You will be asked to state your name and address, and you must tell the truth under penalty of perjury. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a quasi-judicial body, and most of the applications will start with a public hearing. If you must have a conversation, please take it outside and go all the way down to the lobby at the end of the hall. All cell phones should be turned off or silenced. Each application will be heard first by the applicant and their representatives, then the public with questions, and then with questions being asked by the board members and their consultants. After the public hearing is closed, there will be a discussion amongst the board members and their consultants. Do not interrupt that discussion, and a determination will be made before the next application is heard. A determination could be an approval, a denial, or an adjournment. We are fortunate tonight to welcome two new members to our zoning board, Marlene Cheatham and Antonio Martinez. We also welcome back Brian, and I will say your name wrong, Brian, Hildebrand from Keller Sessions, who is our planning and engineering consultants. If your application is adjourned before anything is presented, it is because we do not have all the documentation to render a decision. We have a very busy agenda tonight, and we are asked that all public comments be brief and only about the application being heard. So we can get through our agenda tonight, there will be a 3-minute limit on public comment. Again, I remind you that there is to be quiet in the room, and please only approach the microphone to address the board when you are called. All right, let's start. I think there's a couple of chairs up here. You can have a seat, relax. Okay, continuing business of the board, ZBA 1019, 3638 Spring Street, Hudson Pharmacy. Applicant is seeking a variance for window signage coverage that exceeds 25%.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is John Frustacci, and I'm here for 40 Spring Street and the sign application. Ms. Donnelly, where we had left off, you had recommended that I present a plan and show modifications. And Mr. Fitchie, I believe one of your concerns was that you didn't want to establish a precedent. So what I did was I took this to another level, and I made alterations to the windows. And I removed a significant amount of the material that was of concern. So then what I did was I revised the application, and I reduced it to a request of 50%. So I had emailed images of the new windows so they could be seen.
You have the mouse right in front
I
of
have,
you.
oh gosh. You mean I have to do this?
There's Hudson Pharmacy photos.
Where do I go?
Right.
Scoot over just a little
One
more.
more.
Okay.
There you
That
go.
one.
Ooh. Okay. Wow.
It's tiny. It's all
Didn't know you needed added talent.
I didn't. This is amazing. So, can I enlarge it? Is that possible? Or-
Yeah, go up to the left.
To the
Center
left.
left,
Center.
right near the trash can, there's a, next
No,
one.
no,
Next
left,
one.
left,
There you go,
My other
right there.
left. Okay.
Ah.
So this is the exposure, and you know, it's unsightly. Some of the watermarks they're not watermarks; they're just stains from what we had removed and some other runoff that we do plan on painting this this exposure. So all of this material was removed. I removed it personally, and you can see that I've greatly reduced the coverage. That's. Would you like me to move on and show another
Sure.
exposure? Okay. So this is That was the post office exposure, side of the building. Let me rotate that before, well, you know what, you could come in for some soft collars if I leave it like that. Should sell, make some money. All right, so, all right. Let's do that. Okay, so this is, and I have to say, we love it. Even though I was thick-headed about this in the beginning, it really pops and it looks much better. And I also feel it resolves the concerns of security as well. So if first responders needed to approach any one of these windows or doors, they could peep in and see what's going on. This is the St. Paul's entrance. It's more on a bias. So these are just the doors. And I realize that doors aren't part of the zoning ordinance, but I did them just for the purposes of what we spoke about. First responders needing to see what's going on inside and that sort of thing. And quite honestly, what it also does is it allows people to see who's on the other side of the door before they open it, which was a problem. Yeah, you learn a lot when you're listening to people. Listen, Italian Americans aren't good at that, I'm sorry. So here's the Spring Street exposure. And I removed a significant amount of material from, now this is just, this is set back. This is a neon sign that's set back, but there's also, if you see where the cursor is right now, can you see that right there wiggling? All of that is open glass. It basically follows this crease across and down. So that's all open glass underneath that portion of the awning. And then it's open here and here on the sides and in between here and here as well. And right across. And then over here what I did was I followed just the perimeter of the logo. And this as well, so in between here and to the side is also removed and open.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
How do we know that's 50%? Did you calculate it out?
I wish you didn't ask me that.
Well, they have to approve a variance for 25%.
So I approximated it, and to be quite honest, I don't know. I did the best I could. To measure it, I didn't know whether or not to measure this entire area here and then subtract out these sections here. I didn't know what you considered 50%. I didn't know whether this counted here or under here.
I would say that you would have to measure the window. I'm assuming they're all about the same size.
Right.
Show the square footage.
Right.
And then put a square footage of the signage that you have so they can compare to see that it's 50% of the window.
Okay.
Because
Thank you, sir.
Because what I did was,
they're going to
Now
be,
you're gonna have to speak more.
if they approve a variance, they have to know the percentage of what they're approving other than approximate.
no, that makes sense. I didn't do anything. That's
So
not working.
So I have just a quick question, the Hudson sign, is that a sign or is that part of the sticker on the window?
This one right here, in the
Yeah,
middle,
that's the middle.
that's a sticker on the window.
All right, what about the,
Everything you're
Graphics.
seeing here are,
that's all sticker?
yeah,
All right,
And-
and you said the window goes all the way up to that crease?
yes, sir. Yep.
I guess I have the numbers.
And, you know, just to point out one more fact that may or may not apply. This is not an opaque sign. These are view-through fabrics. So I just feel it should be considered that they're not opaque signs. My other option would be to create an opaque sign and just set it back. I mean, I could very easily take every single item that is above the red items there. You see those red sections?
Yes.
Right? I could very easily have the sign company just duplicate all of these and create foam board signs with those on them and set them back away from the window. But why?
And they would blow in the wind.
They would, well, they would be on the other side of the glass, yes, they would
So
move.
let's see your other picture. Do you have
Okay.
one more? I think you have one or two more?
I do.
Okay. Well, yeah.
There we go. Now, okay, so you can see here that this window is much less than 50%. The doors, I removed the material and it's not really part of the ordinance, so I thought that that would be something you might consider if you consider the whole package. And then I left this window the way it is, and I can certainly reduce it. Personally, I think it was oversized in terms of the typeface, and it was something that the sign company did. But I didn't touch that one because that is the only window that is written in Spanish. And the community did it again. I'm not touching it.
Okay.
All right,
Talk
so,
loud.
okay. So I didn't touch that for that reason. I could very easily remove the entire logo at the top, so I could cut it across and then open it up from above the text to the top. But there's a lot of great information there about what we do for clients in the community. So that's why I didn't touch that.
So even what's in the red is in Spanish, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So is the material's translucent? I mean, you can see
Not
through it?
entirely. If I had to approximate, yes.
Okay.
I'd say 60,
Certain parts of the
40,
day.
certain times of the day. So
Okay.
in the middle of the day, high noon, it is practically opaque. But then as the sun goes down, meaning if you look at that picture now, you can see into the store, kind of,
Yeah.
right? So you can see the shadows there, but that, you have to realize, is a pixelated image taken with a camera. If you're there at night, in that area, I'd say you can see, let me err on the side of the caution, 30% of what you're looking at. You can't see detail.
Okay.
All right, and
One
then
more?
this would be the last image here. And this is the window on St. Paul's. Yep. It really does. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, it's much better for you and it's much better for everybody.
it is.
Yeah.
It really is. It pops each of those segments of the fabric.
Well, thank you for putting in such an effort,
Thank you.
for complying, bringing it down. I think we have to take the building inspector into consideration, plus we need to vote on a percent. So
Right.
we want it to be
Mhm.
not 75, you know what I mean? And
Sure.
we don't think it's gonna be now. So why don't we adjourn this and you come back with a number? You can just submit it to the,
Sure.
submit it to the building department.
Okay.
And you don't even, if it's 50% or less, we can, we can just, well, first we have to see if there's anybody here to speak on this subject.
Of course.
Then you don't even have to necessarily come to this. You did do a great job.
You could then just vote to approve.
Yeah, well, so is there anyone here that's here to speak on Hudson Pharmacy and their signage in their windows? Because as you can see, the zoning board takes care of a lot of things. So, not seeing anybody, I want a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so then we're going to adjourn the decision, because we need that number
Okay.
in order to be specific on
Very
it.
good. And I'll be measuring just the windows, not considering the doors.
Just the windows.
Okay.
Just windows.
Very good.
So we'll
Okay.
adjourn this to October.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Good
you.
job. Good, great job.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, ZBA 2318, 240 North Highland Avenue, front yard variance, renewal. And you are?
Yeah, oh, no, I was trying to close.
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Okay. One more. There we go.
Oh,
No, it's fine.
Thanks.
JB Hernandez, JB Hernandez, architect for the project.
Okay.
This is 240 North Highland Avenue. This is Del Monte residence. We have been in front of this board a year ago with this project. This is a side yard, front yard variance. This is an existing house, non-conforming existing structure. We've done work on the first floor. We had an open permit for the first floor, and then we decided to add a second floor. As such, we came in front of the board last year. We obtained a variance for a front yard variance for the second floor. Then in the process, the time expired, and that's why we're in front of you today. We are
So how
now-
close are we to?
We have
Are you still
every-
are you still in front of the planning board?
No, this is all approved. The only thing missing is to renew the variance.
Okay.
Again, this is a 560 square feet second floor addition. It's right over the main structure. This is an existing structure right on the corner of North Highland and Terrace here. And then again, it's a minimum is 23. We have 23.8 feet. We need 30 feet front yard.
So JP, nothing has changed in this application?
Nothing has changed in this application.
Madam Chair, the only thing I want to point out is, as the board is aware, it's generally 6 months for the variance. This was granted a year ago, so
Right.
it's technically will be a new variance that's being granted, but it isn't, but it is in fact all the same measurements as before.
Just out of curiosity. Just out of curiosity, were they in front of the planning board this whole time? Or was it
No.
already done?
No.
Well, you went in front of the Board of Architectural Review.
Yes, and that
Since
we.
they were here?
Yes,
Since they were here, okay.
and we have that approval as well.
Okay. It's just something we're looking at now.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak on 240 North Highland Avenue, which is a renewal of a front yard variance? Not seeing anyone? Do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. So I don't see any reason not to approve a renewal. Well, it'll be a new variance, right?
It'd be a new variance. I actually have the application for the building permit. We're just waiting for the variance to be granted and then we can issue it.
Make a motion, we approve the new variance.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Okay. 25 North Malcolm Street, Victoria House.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is James Bianco. I'm representing Victoria Home, and we're here to ask for a second extension on the approvals we've already gotten. We're very close to the financing on the project. We expect the GMP construction cost beginning of October, and after that point, we should be able to move forward on the financing.
So when would this have expired?
That was last granted in May. Is that correct, Stuart?
That is correct.
So now?
Right. This month.
6 months. Okay. And you are closer?
Yes, yes.
We enjoy seeing you.
Oh,
I know you're
same here.
frustrated, but,
Same here.
I know you're frustrated, but, okay. Is there anyone here to speak on Victoria Home and their renewal of their variances? Not seeing anyone, do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I have a motion to approve the renewal of the variance? Do
Make a motion, we approve the variance.
I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, too.
Bill.
Okay, ZBA 0219, 41 Cedar Lane.
Good evening,
This is an
everyone.
application is seeking a use variance in order to have a two-family residence in a single-family zone. This is the variance.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Rangasamy Kasinathan. This is 41 Cedar Lane. The property was listed and sold to us as a two-family. We did our due diligence twice at the building department and were never given the violation documents until the pre-zoning meeting with Mr. Joe Agostinelli and Tracy. We found out that the house had these issues. Exhibit B and D shows all the issues that we have gotten it after when we applied for permit for the staircase. As a matter of fact, we don't even have an access to the second floor because of the staircase situations. We are keeping everything layout setback wise the same for the house, literally renovating the interiors in the exact layout as is. The basement being converted to storage, that's the plan right now for a two-family. There is enough space for comfortable parking of 4 cars as well as, if need be, we can even extend the driveway to accommodate additional parking. The property is a total loss and a large financial hardship for us. Exhibit C, we even wanted to sell the property to take some loss, but we listed the property. Even no one will take the property as is. And if we can get the two-family variance, they will someone will offer at least $260,000, much lower than what we paid for. We have maintained the property as we speak. We submitted an electrical permit to at least get power into the house, which we were told to put on hold until we get the two-family variance. House has been vacant all summer, maintaining. It has been a concern, safety concern for the neighbors, as well as there have been a few thefts. Upwards of $200,000 to entirely reconfigure this home to current one-family zoning. Purchase price was $312,000, and nearly $25,000 in closing cost as well as maintaining an empty property. Worth of home after renovation will be approximately $350,000, would be $100,000 loss, which would put us in a very financial hardship. We are local engineers. As a matter of fact, we own an engineering company in Peekskill. We are actually a consulting engineer for city of Ossining. We take care of all the school, fuel oil tank and everything else. My wife operates the medical office in Ossining. We own 2 properties. We are paying taxes to every single dollar that we owe, we pay on time. I am a code compliance engineer myself. I assist many hospitals and universities in the area. So we want to do everything right by the nearest to code. And we met with the inspector several times. As a matter of fact, in January and February, we had our attorney, Jack Petruccio, presented our concern to get the interpretation, to get into two-family. That was, then we were advised to come here to plead for two-family. So we really need this two-family variance at least to make some good on whatever we did. And we the neighboring property, you all know that the neighboring properties are 4 families and 6 family homes, multi-family. So I think we are ready to go. We are ready to renovate the place, to put it on the tax roll and make the place look nice. And it's right now it's an eyesore for the entire neighborhood.
Is there anyone here is there anyone else here to speak on 41 Cedar Lane? We need the mics. Do you have any opinions on this? Or do you want to wait
No,
till
I
we
mean,
close the public hearing?
the applicant was in front of the board for an interpretation.
Right.
And the interpretation was that they didn't lose the non-conforming use, but it was evidence that we got from the water department that the building had the water shut off, I believe, for about 4 or 5 years. So they came back.
2013, correct.
2013, right? So they came back with, now with this application to seek a variance to allow for a 2-family and a single-family zone district. We did meet with the applicant. I believe Brian had been in and explained to them that you'd have to apply for a use variance, and there were certain criteria that you had to meet, that you had to present to the board, because the use variance is a little bit more that you're involved in obtaining a variance of that sort. So they went ahead here to propose to try to get a variance for two-family.
So I think they gave us some of their financial.
They did. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let me close
They
the
did.
public hearing.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Now,
Okay,
discussion.
thank you. The applicant did provide, he was testified to it, but they did provide in their documents financial information as to both purchase price, appraised value, the two offers, which, as the applicant indicated, were both significantly below the asking price. I believe one offer was $150,000, the other was $260,000 with an asking price of $325,000. Purchase price was $312,000. Appraised value currently is $275,000, with taxes just under $10,000 a year for this property. As the applicant further noted and provided a map with his documents, homes on either side are multifamily at that particular location. And it does appear, at least, so in the sense, it would be consistent with other homes that are in that area along Cedar Lane in terms of what is there.
I would say the majority of those homes.
Right, as Woody pointed out.
At that area.
Correct, correct. So the use variance, if granted, and one of the elements is that it would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And I think, as this board can be aware, that particular area of the neighborhood would indicate that there are numerous multifamily homes at that particular location. And as the applicants pointed out, the house is empty now. So restoring it or putting it to a two-family, would in fact benefit the neighborhood rather than keeping it where it is right now as a single family, which effectively can't be sold.
So it's basically going to add value to the community, not take away something.
Correct, correct.
Do we know, Stuart, how many years before 2013 it was a multifamily home?
It was always taxed and operated as a two-family home. At that time, it was a legal non-conforming use.
Okay.
Like, because our code says if you did discontinue the use for a 6-month period, you lose it. So this is why they have to apply for variance again.
Yeah, Marlene, the assessor's card shows it as a multifamily. So it was viewed as that, it has been taxed as that.
So we're not
Oh, so
really
they pay
changing, we're
tax
just
on
kind of
multifamily.
restoring to how things were.
Right, what had happened was there was a foreclosure, so it was vacant for a lengthy period of time. And that's one of the reasons that the applicant originally came here seeking an interpretation, because he was looking to see if, through an interpretation, the board would interpret the code that he, in fact, was continuing with the non-conforming. When it didn't go in that direction, the idea was to then come back for a use variance, which would essentially allow him to operate as a two-family. That's why they're here now.
Yes, sir.
So, my question is, you have absolutely no intention of doing anything with that basement, right?
No. Yeah, then we
I'm
went
sure
over
you've heard that in other boards too.
No, we went over that, as I
Okay.
said, we are here to comply with everything that we approve.
Ryan, do you have anything to
No, that's fine.
add? So, if you look at the four
Yeah,
reasons.
I mean, you've got, the first is that the applicant cannot realize a reasonable return, provided that the lack of return is substantial, as demonstrated by his financial evidence. He's given us evidence with regard to that in terms of value, what he paid and what it's been offered. That the alleged hardship relating to the property in question is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the district or neighborhood. In fact, it's the reverse, because the district or neighborhood, in fact, is primarily multifamily, which goes into letter number. The third requirement is the requested use variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and as we've already discussed what that is. And then finally, that the alleged hardship has not been self-created. What the applicant has indicated is that, when purchased, it was understood to be as a two-family. So, under those grounds, the board could determine that there's been a sufficient proof to demonstrate the basis for granting the use variance, so that this can be treated as a two-family house, which is, again, specific just to this house. Doesn't change the zone, just specific to the one piece of
Because
property.
it's very unusual to do these. So, I believe you did your homework, and you showed us that this house, which I've always thought of it as a two-family house anyway, even when it was up, because it was one, when it was occupied. Marlene, what do you think?
I would say yes.
Tony?
Yeah, I support. I think he's made his case.
Bob?
Well, I support it, and I'd like to put it in a motion that we grant the variance.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
6 Prospect Place, applicant is seeking an area variance for the legalization of an existing rear yard deck.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can your name, please?
Jim Bosinas from ABP Architecture. I'm here representing the executor of the estate, Joseph DeCrenza. It's for 6 Prospect Place, and we're here to legalize a small rear yard deck that exists currently. The first floor of the house overhangs it towards the rear yard.
Can we go to it?
So that way you can keep talking, and I'll play this.
The first floor of the house overextends the deck in question in the rear yard. So the existing conditions of this deck does not extend to any further beyond the rear yard than the house already exists, and it does not extend towards the side yards any additional dimension as well. There has always been a deck in this location. Somewhere along the lines it was expanded, but
So this deck does this deck need any variances?
no, it's just the one underneath,
Yeah, I see.
tucked
where
up
you-
against the house here.
Right.
And it doesn't increase the footprint of the existing house. It doesn't extend any closer to the property lines than the existing house does. And it's used for egress from the finished basement.
Joe, you consider that a deck, or you consider that a porch?
The bottom
Yeah.
one is, if it's supported on footings, it's a deck. It would be it would be a patio if it was on the ground, but it's for all intents and purposes a deck. But it's within the footprint of the house.
Right. So it's not even the big deck I'm talking about.
No,
No, it's just the small one sitting underneath the first floor.
Okay. And this is in the state too, right? Unfortunately. Hello? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank
Is there
you.
anybody here to speak on 6 Prospect Place? Not seeing anybody? Do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
And so moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was, seems like a no-brainer.
Make a motion to approve said variance.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
We'll build your deck.
What was to get out of the cellar? Okay. Now we're gonna move right along if I don't lose my place, okay. ZBA 1419, 24.5 William Street. Applicant is seeking an area variance for a side yard setback in the rear and both side yards for a proposed addition.
Hello, my name is Louis Roan. I'm the architect for the project. And what we're looking to do is basically take the existing footprint of the building as it exists today, rebuild the first floor and extend it up to the second floor. The building is an existing non-conforming setback. So we're not increasing the footprint of the house so much as it is we're taking that coverage and creating a second floor and renovating the house.
And Louis, you got the BAR approval on this, correct?
Yes.
Just want to let the board know
Do they
that.
have their approvals?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the only picture we have?
No, let me see what else we got. We have- That's site plans, let me
You
do
should
some
have
other
all
stuff.
of, you should have all of everything that I
Yeah.
have.
Okay.
Here's one.
So it's really a house that takes up the lot.
Exactly, and it's existing, the footprint is, I think we're, you know, 1.5 feet on one side, 4.5 on the other.
Oh,
We're not really, we're not getting any closer than what it is today. The rear has a covered entrance to the basement. We're basically going to fully enclose it. That's the front of the house. You guys don't have, I basically have,
Yeah.
you should have
Oh,
that
yeah.
too. Oh, okay, just want to make sure. So that's the rear of the house. So we're taking that existing, I'll say, you know, the drip edge, and we're going to rebuild the first floor and put in a proper foundation, and then take it up to extend the house to enlarge the second floor.
Above that footprint.
That's correct. So we're not extending to the left, to the right, or to the rear from what you have there.
Bringing it forward,
Bringing it
up, bringing it right up,
Yeah.
yeah.
Up to the rear.
Yeah.
But what they're looking, our job is not the air. Our job is the variances of the side yard setback in the rear and the both side yards. So because it's so close.
There's existing.
Well, what happened, Joe? Talk first.
Well, even if the original of the house doesn't meet the setback requirements, it's considered, again, pre-existing non-conforming, but when they build an addition to it, even if they're matching up with the house, it's extending the non-conformance. So you have to grant variances to allow for the addition, even though it's in line with the original one.
Because they're such big lots, right? I mean, yeah.
That's not for me to determine.
So is this what it looks like now, or it looks like the blue?
The front is blue, it was stripped off and it was in the process of re-siding. And
Oh, okay.
And we're told to stop, so now we're making sure that everything is in process and
Good.
approved before moving forward.
All right, so he's staying in the footprint. Is there anybody here that wants to speak on 24.5 William Street? Should be example. Seeing no one. You're staying in with your footprint,
Yes.
right?
That will get torn down and rebuilt in the same spot.
Okay.
They're not changing the number, it's not going from one family
This is
to
going
two
higher.
family, they're not going from.
Yeah, how many families is it?
Right now it's a one family and it's intended at this point to stay one family.
Okay, so do I motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a motion to approve his variances that he needs. All right, Joe, is he all set with them?
Yeah, the only question I have is on the description, it says, side yard setback in rear. You don't need you only need a side yard variance and a both side yard variance, right? 'Cause the
I
back-
think so, did I
the
write
back-
rear?
He did, he wrote,
Well, the back has proposed 77 feet, which has plenty of,
Okay, then.
Side yard and
I was
the rear
basically
is-
showing that we were complying by showing the 77 feet, not that we
Right.
need the variance.
so you need two variances.
The side yard variances, yes,
Side
thank
and
you.
combined side yard.
Side.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a motion to approve the variances. There's two.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
6 Narragansett Avenue. Applicant is seeking a variance for the parking in the front yard.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson. This is Manny Anjo. Hello. And
And
I'm
who are
Mark
you?
Malone. I'm Mark Malone from 18 Iroquois Road in Ossining. My wife and I wrote a letter of support for Mr. Anjo for this front yard variance, and he asked me to help him present tonight. So what we're asking for is a variance from the provisions of section 270-30A5, which prohibits front yard parking. Oh, thank you. So the bottom line with this was that the house was built in the early 1900s. It's 1900. It's a fairly small lot. It has a very narrow driveway. The neighbors on both sides have been noticed for this application. They both have consented to the application. They have no objection. The crux of the matter is this. The driveway at one point is actually less than 14 feet. If you look where the house sort of juts out, it's less than 14 feet because there is a Belgian block there and there is a fence, and the 14 feet is from the end of that portion of the house that juts out to the property line. So you have about maybe 13 and a half feet. Mr. Anjo, it's a two-family house. It's in a legal two-family house. He has tenants. The tenants are upstairs. One of the tenants is a nurse. Mr. Anjo is a police officer. If you're just taking the average width of a car, it's about 6 to 6.5 feet. So that 13 and a half feet virtually leaves no room. You can't move two cars in that area. So even if what the Anjos do basically is they park up front where you see that 24 feet and 2 inches, and there's enough room to park 2 cars. And then they are proposing the front yard have a parking space just to the left of the doorway, and then in front where you see it's about 6.5. 7 feet?
7 feet and 6.5. It's a little more
from the property line. The issue is they can't get in. Neither one of them can have an unobstructed, unfettered movement of their cars because of the configuration of the house on the property and the narrow width of the driveway. If you look at Exhibit C,
I'll get there, I promise. That's in your document, right, Mark?
it is, yeah. Oh, it's in both documents, actually. Hopefully you all have the letter of support.
Yes.
And also the supplement.
They have them all here.
That might not be C.
No, that's, C should be...
You know what, they all have the hard copies here.
Okay,
They've all
so
got it.
if you look at Exhibit C, that's a house on Upper Croton Avenue who does essentially what Mr. Anjo is looking to do. They have a narrow driveway, it's an older house. And I failed to mention that, and you probably all know this, Narragansett, there's no on-street parking. So we have this issue on many of the avenues in the village where there's no on-street parking. So in this particular instance, on Upper Croton Avenue, they have a narrow driveway. They have a car which is parked in the front part of the house. Now, a little bit different from Mr. Anjo's, here the car is exposed. One of the reasons that you prohibit front yard parking is that the visual impacts for the streets, for pedestrians, that type of thing, it's more adverse. When you have front yard parking in front of a house, the visual impacts are not what the village is looking to do. So in essence, he's looking to do something that's very similar to what's done on Upper Croton Avenue. Again, the problem with having no on-street parking in this situation, you can't pull the car out and leave it in the street. It all has to be in the driveway area off-street. And there's a bunch of instances. If you look at Exhibit E, there's a bunch of instances where people have blacktopped in front of their house, in the front yard, a portion of their front yard, and they pull up and they park there.
And that's on Ramapo Road and part of also
Looks like Mechanical. Again, streets where you don't have any on-street parking. So what people have done is basically taken a portion of their front yards, blacktopped it, and they park there. The two issues with that, one is safety. There's no shoulder of the road there, obviously. The second issue, obviously, is the visual impacts. It's a visual, and what the village considers an adverse visual impact. Mr. Angio, on the other hand, is parking off the street, and he's, if you look at Exhibit B, I believe, you can see that he's screened his parking. You can see that his parking is off the street, and they'll be screened, it is screened now, and those bushes will obviously continue to grow. At some point, probably in the next 2 years, you won't be able to see the car from the roadside, or there's no sidewalks here, but I don't know what pedestrians might be walking there, but they wouldn't be able to see it. The last exhibit is an exhibit in the local area where there's no on-street parking, where people just park right in their front yards. There's numerous instances of this in the Indian Village area, and you can see...
Also on Camp Woods Road and some in Narragansett, where people are parking in the front and just on top of the grass with nothing obstructing it, nothing to prevent the car from being hid in the way by bushes or fences or anything.
So again, you have the issue of how do people deal with this issue of no on-street parking, where you have, particularly a lot of these houses are single-family houses, and everybody has more than one car nowadays. If you have kids, you can have 4 or 5 cars. So we've come and we're asking for a variance so that he can have parking in front, so that his tenants can park there, and that he can have unobstructed motor vehicle access to and from his house going through his driveway.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak on 6 Narragansett, right?
Correct.
6 Narragansett. Does anybody want to speak on it? Not seeing anyone. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So we had this house in front of us 8 months ago? With the person that bought the house, because he bought it to fix it up, it was covered in trees, it was burnt. And when we had a major discussion at that time about parking. And that is why there's a variance to make sure the driveway could be as wide as it could be, right? Because he's got like, without these 2 cars that are parked on the grass now. So there's a 2-car garage in the back, and there's a pad in front of the garage that easily holds 2 cars. So that's 4 cars. And that's the way we looked at it when we looked at it the last time. And so why are we not parking in the garage?
Well, if I could just pass out, the crux of the problem is not the garage parking. The crux of the problem, may I approach and show you on the board?
Just tell us,
Okay.
because then you'll be different.
Crux of the problem is,
We should have a pointer. Oh, you're doing things.
it's the bottleneck created where you see the 14, you see where the house juts out into the driveway. That's 14 feet from the edge of the house to the property line. And as I say, there's a chain link fence which brings it in even further, and a Belgian block type of like many people have in their driveways. So you're talking about, there's right at that bottleneck, there's about 13 feet, maybe 13 feet 5 inches for a car to get out. So there's no question that people could park up at the 24 and 2-inch area. The question is the access here. If someone parks up in the 24 and the tenants park anywhere in front of that area, that 14-foot area, it blocks everybody in.
Well, I think what we had discussed at that time was knowing that it was gonna be a 2-family house, each family having 1 garage and 1 car in front. 4 cars are not trying to exit that driveway at the same time. Again, we get it. We get about the crunch in parking. probably 90%
So
of
it's-
us here have it.
It's virtually impossible to have one family in one garage and the other in the other one and have a car get out. If I was the builder of the house, yes, I would push that. But living there for the past 6 months, you can't have a car in the garage and then the other family in the other, and then them come in and out of these and me come in and out of these without locking them in. Because if I park a car right outside the garage, the car that's next to me cannot exit. It will always scrape against the stairs. It's just too narrow.
As I say, it's not just one car per family. The tenants have 2 cars, Mr. Anjo has 2 cars. So you're talking about a number of cars in a 2-family house. And again, I would just refer the board to Exhibit D, in which a block away, the same parking configuration. This person has a very narrow driveway. There's cars parked up in that driveway, but if he parked in back, that person would not be able to get
That's a one-family house as
out.
well.
And that's a 1-family house.
So in essence, you're giving the building department a handbook in violations.
I don't believe I am. These, especially on Rainbow Road, I grew up in Indian Village. Those cars have been there since I grown up.
I
I mean,
understand that.
I think those people have been granted.
I also, I'm not quite sure of the need for taking not only one car, but 2 cars in the front yard. And we have we have to, do you know how many people we have come, come on. Do you know how many people we have come in here and asked to park in their front yard? Almost, tonight was an exception, I have to tell you, but all the time. And at first there was 1 car parked there, and then suddenly there was 2 cars parked in the front yard.
Well, if I could show you one more picture of the house prior to it being,
We know what the house looked like, we saw it.
prior to it being developed.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was-
we saw what the 2 young men that bought it and what they did to it. Right, the house.
So you know
It was
that
unrecognizable.
there's always been one parking space right where it says 9 feet. There's always been a parking space. This is a picture from the old. So there's always been one there.
So your second family, they're granted 2 parking spaces. So you're giving them 2 parking spaces.
The guy's a nurse. She has 3 kids.
You
know, he's gotta go to
I get
work.
the whole parking issue.
We all have it.
Because I have an issue too, because I gotta park 2 cars out on the street and pay for a pass. Because the
Yeah, I mean, I'll
house that I
gladly
live
pay
in
for a
was
pass.
built in the 50s.
Yeah,
Nothing fits in a garage under the house anymore.
Yeah.
So
I understand.
it's-
I mean, like, if I had the street parking, trust me, I'd utilize the street
I
parking.
understand that, but I'm on Park Avenue.
So,
I gotta park on Slavell or.
I can't park on Campwoods.
So-
I can't
so
park
why
on-
don't- so are you using the garages?
Is there not
I
overnight?
am using the garages.
You would know, there's overnight parking on Pine Avenue?
No,
Not at all.
not at all.
It's not.
And there's cars that actually park basically like I do
Right.
to avoid that, because Pine Avenue is very similar.
The problem is everyone will want to park in their front yard. And yes, you gave us some examples, and yes, we know there's some people that do it out there. So which of the 4 cars park in the garage?
I have 3 cars. My wife and I park in the back. The tenants park in the front. They utilize the front door as well to go into their house. They have 3 kids, one's a baby that's 3 months old, so they're conveniently parking in the front. This also makes it easier for them.
And as is the reason we would get from everyone that wants to park in their front yard.
I understand that, but, I mean, they'll just block me in. If the guy's gotta go take care of a patient at 3 in the morning, I have to get up and move my car. If I gotta go to a shots fired call on Van Cortlandt Avenue, I gotta get up and ask my neighbor to move his car. that just delays response.
Just to let you know, though, I'm guessing the issue is not so much creating the 4 required spaces in the rear yard, right? Because
I'm
you
sorry?
have to- Space, you can
Turn
create
it
the
on,
4
Joe.
spaces.
We have to get remotes.
Yeah, I can't have 4 spaces in the back.
Okay, but you can provide 4 spaces in the back. The issue that you're bringing to the board is the width of the driveway, which you're saying is not 14 feet, it's 13 and a half feet. But the code says that you just have to have a minimum of 12 feet. It doesn't specifically say, if I have 2 spaces or 3 spaces or 4 spaces,
Right.
I now have to make the driveway wider to accommodate that.
Right.
That's something that you want to do so that you don't have to have one car come up and down the driveway.
Well, no,
at a time.
that's wrong.
Well, that's what you stated.
No, he's saying that they don't want to park in the driveway. They say they have to park, literally park in that 13 and a half feet, which I don't
They
understand at
don't.
all.
It's-
No,
you
no,
have
no,
the
no,
2-car
you
garage
missed,
and
you
then
missed
have
the
the
point.
parking in front of
You
them.
cannot get back. If 2 people park at the 24.2 and somebody parks in back of them and then in back, that's a 14 feet. You
No.
cannot get 2 cars
But I
past.
believe what we're saying is there's a, it's first we heard 4 cars, now we're hearing there's 5 cars, there's a 2-car garage there,
Yes,
okay?
but you cannot get to the 2-car garage without going through a 14-foot span.
Right.
Actually less, 13 and a half. You cannot get 2 cars. So if somebody parks in the garage and somebody parks in that area in back where the house juts out, you can't get past them. It's an egress-ingress problem.
I
It's not parking
understand that,
space.
but, yeah, I understand that, but it's not like it's a parking lot. It's not like people are moving in and out. Like, everybody has these thin little driveways and,
A lot of people also have widened their driveway. I don't have that luxury because I can't go into my neighbors.
Can I just ask, and I apologize, because I don't know if it was answered. Are cars in fact parked in the garage?
he
Yeah,
says there's one.
I got
there.
one car in the garage and a motorcycle.
One car, okay, got it.
But that makes it 5 cars. Because he
How many
says-
cars total are there?
3. I have 3, my tenants have 2, so 5.
5
Five
cars.
cars and a motorcycle.
And almost-
And
And a motorcycle.
And yard tools and electric leaf blowers and lawnmower and all that stuff.
It's so important that we set the example. And this is exactly the opposite of what we want now in the Village of Boston. If you want to go before the village board and tell them, we need to park in the front yards of all these houses, there'll be cars everywhere,
I understand.
okay?
Can I just ask a question? The Upper Croton Avenue, doesn't that have a variance? I thought that had a
What
variance.
property?
Which one?
What are we talking about?
It's Upper Croton Avenue, it's the
Exhibit D.
exhibit D.
Mark, I'd have to look, I don't know, offhand, I don't know if it does or does not.
My understanding was that they had gotten a variance.
I don't know off the top, so I can't say.
I think it's John Fry's property.
John Fry's?
Yeah.
Your space that is off to the side, and I'm not gonna say that's the front of the house, I'm gonna call your roof and wood porch the front of your house,
Okay.
okay? Could you stack 2 cars there if you
No.
would change that?
Did you see it?
No, I'm asking,
No, you can't.
This really.
you don't get that.
Yeah, you
I'm trying
seen
to-
the one on the side, yeah, the 2 over there.
It has to be a tiny little car, too.
Yeah, it'd have to be like a smart car or
Smart.
something.
they're tiny little homes. It's really taking up the whole. We went over this in nausea with the gentleman that was working on the house.
Yeah, I mean,
About not parking in the front of the house.
madam, if I was building the house in purpose of selling it, I would tell you, like, you can park 50 cars in the back just
No, no,
just to
we're
get
not,
those
we don't,
things
no,
right.
we're not, we get this.
Yeah,
We
but
get
I live
this.
in the house, like, I live there and I know what's good and what's bad about the house, and that would really help me out tremendously. I'd have to get up at 3 in the morning to ask my neighbor to move his car, and I don't wanna do that.
do you have space in the rear yard to
The
make
rear
more
yard
spaces?
is like on a level that slants up, so you really can't park in the rear yard. It's a really high grade, starts sloping up.
And the issue is, how do you get out? The bottleneck is created by the jut out of the house.
Nobody parks in the way. If you can juggle the cars. That, I don't get the not getting out stuff. So,
If you have 2 cars parked on the left side of the property, behind the garage, in front of the garage,
correct.
those other 2 cars can get out to the right. So if my neighbor comes in and blocks everyone in at night, and my wife tries to go to work in the morning, or I try to leave, now I gotta go knock on his door and ask him to leave, because he's the last car.
See, he has them walking down the driveway. Because
I
they're not
understand
using the garages.
Right.
The key is when we looked at the 4 parking spots, when we gave the variances for widening the driveway as much as they could,
Yeah, but also, like,
Was
I don't
only
wanna
the fact
bring
that
this
was-
up with the garage. The garage is very tiny. My wife's car does not fully fit in the garage. It's a garage, 2-car garage, yes. It's not a very big garage. I mean, the garage is probably built back in who knows when cars were tiny, now cars are big.
I
That's
think
why
cars
it's,
are going the other way. I think cars used to be real big, and now they're.
Really?
Nothing fits in the
I don't
house.
know, those Escalades keep growing compared to the, 19, you know,
I don't know, I don't have an
1990
Escalade.
models.
Drive in my house, you can't put a car in.
I mean, it's a really tiny garage. Like I said, like, if I was
Again.
building the house and purpose of flipping it, I would sing you songs telling you can park as many cars as you want back there.
Well, you're the young man that bought the house.
Well, I know.
So, right?
Trying to live in Ossing and work in Ossing,
Yeah.
I like this town, so,
We all do, and we
Yeah.
all have driveway problems, and we all have parking
I know, we
problems.
try to make it better. I mean,
So that lot is not, is that your lot or that's a separate tax lot?
that's
the
my
type-
backyard.
That's it, Bob.
That's
his
his
lot.
backyard?
Yeah,
But that's the one he says go up and stuff.
yeah, it starts slanting up.
So what we've done in the past to get people off the front yard is give them a variance to open up their backyards a little bit.
Yeah.
But again, the issue is not the number of parking spaces. He has
I know what he
room.
did.
It's just that bottleneck creates an inability for somebody to get out if they park up front towards the rear of the house.
So if there's a car parked, left side, all the way up to the driveway,
Yep.
as close as possible without having to climb out the right side of the car.
But
Or
that's.
backing in, or you're back there.
Okay.
Let's say perfect conditions. All right, and for instance, for some reason, you had opened up whatever and parked there and had the cars parking this way in that grassy area,
You're talking about in the back or in the front?
in the lot, in the
It says
back.
tax
Where it
lot.
says tax lot,
Yeah.
and you opened up a space back there, if we give you a variance to open that up, park 2 cars this way, with that car parked in that
It
corner, you
wouldn't-
could still swing out that corner,
It
correct?
wouldn't fit in the backyard just because you couldn't open up because of the grade. It would have to be like a major excavation to make that level. And it would also block me in. So then if my neighbors come in and they park, like you said, perfectly against the fence on the side, almost no car can make that left-hand turn. It's too tight. We'll hit against the stairs, the entrance of the house. I've actually scratched my Jeep there plenty of times already because it's that tight.
We have to say,
I mean, the front of the house is going to be blocked by those bushes. It's virtually going to be on.
It's not you blocking the front of the
Yeah.
house.
I
It's the-
understand.
It's the whole,
The whole thing, the
the
whole.
Part of, we set
Parking in your
up, trying
front
not to set
yard.
a precedence.
Yeah, I
That's what
mean,
happens.
but like we explained at the beginning of the presentation, it's a common practice in that area. These houses, they're two families, but the lots are so tiny. I try,
compared to the one you just saw, this is a huge lot. Compared to the Williams Street one.
I get it. There's
Yeah.
other parts of the village.
Lots of other parts. of the
But,
village.
these houses, they're old structures, old units that are now two-family houses, and, I mean, it's not the eyesore they used to be a year and a half ago, that house. Having that car in the front, blocked by bushes, if you guys, please, I mean, it'll
Yeah,
help
no.
me out a lot.
Is it one, I mean, like, literally one?
No, it's two cars. It was one car, and then it suddenly became two cars. So, as Bob just said, if we gave you the one on the side, the 9'4", you would have to put one of those, and they're kind of small cars too, because I've seen them.
They're SUVs, they got Honda CR-V and a Mazda CX-5, so they're cars, they're SUVs.
The one I mean, I know the property, so, I mean, I've seen it right now, it's like, he's like
We
on the
go to
sidewalk
the
and on the.
I think it's one of the pictures,
Yeah.
they're SUV.
Yeah. But,
One of the things, the parking space that you're showing that's closest to the front on the street,
Yeah.
the way it's drawn in, that's gonna take over the walkway or? a good
No, so the
portion of
walkway will
or-
still have 2.5 feet for you to walk in.
right now, it's literally parked on top of the walkway.
Yeah, but the walkway is kind of wide. So you still have 2 feet of walkway, and then 2 wheels touch the grass and 2 wheels touch the walkway.
So that spot really indicates the same place where you're parking now?
Yeah, but that, like the picture shows.
I think if you look at exhibit, I say it's exhibit B.
That's 17-foot dimension to the back of that car. That's to the back of the car.
That's the back of the spot, yeah. Yeah. So like, yeah, like Mark said, that's the car right there.
Right.
It'll be a walkway. Well, where the 9-foot one is, where it says space number 2, they have made it white gravel.
Right. So if you were to maintain that section where the 9-foot and your white gravel, if you were to come straight down with that, and I think I understand why you have that car sitting in.
Yeah, because there's a utility pole, there's a Con Edison pole right there on my property, so you can't put them back to back like you're saying.
No, I understand that. But all I'm saying is if you were to bring, in other words, bring your line with the porch, bring that straight down and make that gravel and around the utility pole, whatever you gotta do, if you were to park that car there, what's the difference in your dimension where your driveway is and that the back bumper of that car, if you were to slide that car back and somewhat open that up a little bit? I'm trying to get you away from being in front of the house. Trying to give you, or if you park the car on a half of an angle and you had all of that there, and then your walk would be incorporated into that. See where I'm going with this?
I
give
don't
them
see
one.
that.
Huh?
Give them one spot.
The space that's designated as space 2, how would you get out of there onto Narragansett? Are you backing out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't back out if the other car's in there.
No, you can.
Well, my concern is,
No,
I just
no
watched you do it.
easier than you could back down that, or come up and down that driveway. That's how, this is the car and this is the car right now. It's like a little L. Yeah, go ahead.
what I'm saying is, to carry this line down,
Yeah.
all right, gravel, your walkway, whatever you want to do, you would either slide this car back or park it on a tilt of an angle, and you make it work, or you back your cars in.
Yeah, but where your tip of the pen is, there's a garden there, right there in front. Where the stairs are, there's a garden right there.
Right here.
A
Yep.
garden?
Right, but
It was built into the house.
what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to keep you from this area here over, which right now you're sticking in front of it, which I'm saying is the front of the house. What I'm saying is to maintain this,
So you're saying back up that spot 2 feet?
or if it's feasible, park it on an angle. Because you're already coming through here already with the cars, correct? This car's gotta go through here somewhere. So what's the difference if you went this way?
person just applied.
Yeah, that person gets out.
I'm not sure that drawing depicts exactly what the situation is. So if you're here on the gravel, this is the one that's in front of them up here. So you should be able to back out. The way that they have it here, this person should be able to back out.
Right.
One's in Narragansett.
That's how they pull into the
Talk about
driveway,
scary.
and they pull back out.
Back into the spot at night.
Look, it's a common practice in that area neighborhood, because like I said, the houses are just, my lot is just so small. There's bigger lots that are using.
We cannot condone just because other people do something, because then this room will be filled with people that expect a variance.
I understand.
And Mr. Khan, we don't know if the Upper Croton Avenue has a variance?
I have to check. I don't have the access to it right here, Mark. I'd have to go see if, that is Mr. Fry's house. I'd have to see if that in fact was granted. I just do not know. If it was, it precedes
gonna
me,
continue.
so it
Okay.
could do that way.
And they park their violation.
There's several houses, even on Croton Avenue, that they blacked up the front of the house to park as well, sir.
No,
So
got you.
it's a common practice in Austin.
Okay, so I think we have to look up some more stuff. And you have to go back and look at your little drawing board, because it looks like you just landed those cars wherever they fit. I'll be honest with you, because it's on the walk. It's right on the walk.
It's 2 wheels on the walkway, yes, but the walkway is wide, and it still leaves plenty of room for a person to get by, even carrying groceries. So 2.5 feet, I feel like it's as wide as this table. That's a walkway.
It's still against the code.
Stuart.
Yeah.
Stuart, over here.
Okay. I'm hearing voices.
Can we table this or
Adjourn it.
adjourn it until next month, and maybe they can come up with, I'm trying to work with you and not just say no. All right, everybody gets the parking problems in the village, we all do. I have it. And I would like to make a motion to adjourn it to next month, and then hopefully we could, or.
In the interim, they can contact building department, and, we can set up
Put your heads
a
together,
pre-app or something.
maybe
Sure.
Yeah.
all the stars align and we can come up with a solution.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're going to adjourn it. ZBA 1619, 17 Pleasantville Road, application to seeking a use variance permitting an existing building to be used for a 2-story, 2-family residence.
Hang on.
Love those. Oh, Mr. Streckman.
Good evening, members of the board and consultants. Wayne Spector for the applicant, Linda Ann Development Corp. With me tonight is the president, Robert Camilli. Linda Ann is his wife. My client is a local resident. He's lived here all his life. He also is a business owner in Pleasantville, owns a construction company, Peter Camilli Contracting Inc. in Pleasantville, New York. He wanted to invest in his community that he's lived in his entire life, so he purchased this particular property in May of 2017. This is a building, a house in the NC1 district, in a kind of an unusual section of the district, which is really where I want to focus, is the particular conditions that exist which affect this particular property, as well as the surrounding properties, but there are some unique issues with this particular property. There's no CO for this house, or for this building, and I call it a house because it is in actuality, as you can see from its construction and its appearance, a house. We don't know when it was built, but there is a survey which was included in our package that goes back to 1966, which shows it as a 1.5-story residence. In the NC1 district, the properties are required. You can have a mixed residential and commercial use, but the residential can only be on the upper level, and the lower level has to be commercial. And this is the crux of why we are here tonight, because my client wishes a use variance to allow this building, this structure, to be used as a two-family house, which we are claiming is a more appropriate structure, and also because there are absolute hardships in connection with using it as a mixed commercial residential property. When my client bought the house, it had been owned by the prior owner, had used the house as basically a home business. She had used the house as a very small hair salon, and also as a residence. And there was residential use when he bought it in both the upper and the lower level. There was a full bedroom, small kitchen, and a full bathroom with shower downstairs, as well as the salon chairs downstairs as well, and upstairs was an apartment that had not been in use. My client purchased the property and proceeded to do renovations to the property, contacted a local realtor about renting out the space to see what interest there would be, contacted Schatz Realty. In May, I believe, of 2017, was immediately advised, good luck getting a commercial tenant. Nonetheless, the property had been marketed, and while he was doing that, he proceeded to renovate the upstairs for purposes of converting it to a modern residential unit. He's put in significant money into the structure, and in our submission there are actual numbers in terms of what he paid for the house, as well as improvement costs. The house really required pretty much a gut renovation, especially certainly on the upstairs, to make it livable and make it modern. At the end of the day, renovation costs are going to most likely exceed, but certainly be around $100,000 in order to bring this property both inside and outside up to date. He's made improvements to the exterior of the house. It's much more attractive right now as well. He's continually been in contact with real estate agents about the potential for renting out the downstairs. He changed brokers and hired Home Finders, which is a local realtor as well, and was provided at that point with extensive information regarding the commercial real estate market for small uses, such as what this would probably be appropriate for if somebody was out there to rent it. And for this type of property, there really is very little, if any, market. And in addition, the NC1 district in this area is quite unusual because of the fact that there is no off-street parking in this particular area of the village. And there are commercial uses adjacent in some of the properties that are adjacent. But if you look at some of the submissions, the aerial photographs that were submitted, as well as the tax map, you'll see the main difference is that this property does not afford enough space to put sufficient off-street parking to support two uses, let alone one commercial use. There's
There's a plot plan that was submitted that shows there would be, that we could fit 4 spaces in the rear, which would be appropriate for as a two-family home, but really would not support both a commercial and a residential use. And there's really no way to extend that or expand that. Some of the other uses there's another barber shop there, is pretty much paved over and has quite a bit more parking. I would also point out, if you look at lot number 57 and 56, which are adjacent in the same district, I walked the area there. There's no apparent commercial use in either of those properties, which indicates that they're both also designed as houses and appear to be houses, and they both appear to be used fully as residential properties. Across the way, we did an extensive review of the other properties. It appears that most if not many of the properties, if not all of the properties, are either fully commercial or fully residential in that area, and there are several multifamily, obvious multifamily houses as well, or properties right across Pleasantville Road. I understand that the NC1 line is basically Pleasantville Road, but in terms of the character of the neighborhood and how this property fits in the neighborhood, you certainly need to look at both sides. And the use of this property, you can see the narrow, almost pie-shaped nature of this particular property is certainly consistent with what's surrounding this property on all sides. So I've shown you, we have pictures, we have photographs, we have a plot plan, we also have interior floor plans which were submitted as well, and photos of the premises itself. Again, you can see that it was designed and built as a single-family home. We've also submitted some information regarding the financial viability of the property. If my client cannot rent that lower level, he cannot make a return on the property given the cost of the property, what he paid for it, his closing costs, and the renovation costs, which are absolutely required. You're looking at a property which is going to throw off maybe $1,750, I believe, is the rent for the rent for the upstairs, and if the lower level cannot be rented, you're talking about a capitalization rate probably of about 1% for this property, given the investment in it, which is well below what's reasonable for any kind of an investment. My client is here tonight as well, can answer any questions, and certainly I'm happy to take questions from the board. I feel that the submission provides you the information that you need. It also provides the justification given the standards for use variance. As far as the unnecessary hardship, I point out the period of time since my client has bought the property, that he has explored or tried to rent that bottom level as commercial. It was fully his intent to try as best he could to invest in the property, improve the property, create a better property for the village, and comply with the requirements, but it just doesn't appear that the nature of this particular property, the unusual nature, the particular nature of this property will allow for that. And it's a condition that he can't change, which is the availability of parking, because any business is going to have places for people to park in order for it to thrive or survive. So that's one of the reasons, and like I said, the applicant, my client, cannot obtain a reasonable return if he cannot provide rental or obtain rental income for the lower level. If it's just based on the rent from the upstairs as a residential, which is really the appropriate use for this property given its physical characteristics. It is unique. The hardship is unique to this property once again because of the particular size and physical nature of it, and the lack of any area to put any type of parking which would support any kind of commercial use for that property. And it would certainly not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And this is not a condition. The situation with the parking and the inability to
find commercial tenants. It's not a condition that's caused by my client. Unfortunately, it's something that is endemic to our community. The commercial markets are very depressed, and there's no sign of them coming out when you speak to the realtors. And you have other viable commercial areas in the village where really commercial uses should be more focused. If you're talking, Croton Avenue and other areas of the village really are much more appropriate for commercial uses than this particular really small segment of the NC1 district. So that's the nature of our application tonight, and like I said, my client is here willing to answer any questions or add to it, and I'm certainly happy to take questions from the board and the public as well.
What is this house? Is there anyone here that's here to speak on Pleasantville Road? This is the house that's, I think, one building away from them, or two at the most. It was just redone a couple years ago.
Which page are you on?
It doesn't have page numbers, it's in section 10 though. Because you should be sharing with Tony.
I'd like to see it.
This one. That's the vendor's office. This one.
This is the one that's just a few houses down in front.
I believe you're talking about either lot 56 or 57. Which one is it?
It's the beige house, it's a house, it looks like a house.
That's the one to the right, closest towards Wall Arrow.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right, which was just done a couple of years ago.
Yes, I believe that was a realtor downstairs and then an apartment upstairs.
Oh, there's a realtor
I
there?
I believe so, because I looked at that house to purchase that.
Okay, so there is a business in this first one?
No, there isn't. It's
No,
empty.
no.
It's been for sale for over a year now.
Oh, yeah, there was, but there's no, it has been for sale for a long time.
Yeah, I know, I'm familiar with that. Yes.
Yeah, okay, so, the realtor's gone.
We included some realtor information about availabilities and what's out there on the market, just to show how long commercial properties have been on the market, to support our, what we're saying to you about the viability of renting this property out as both a commercial and residential.
So how many rooms would the apartment be on the first floor?
2 bedrooms. There's 1 bedroom upstairs.
And have you finished the house?
No.
But he has put significant improvements into the house already, he just can't finish
I don't
downstairs
live
at
very
this
far
point.
from here. I have a very thin drive. And it does have a driveway, it does have some parking in the back?
Yes. 4 spaces.
Okay.
That's it.
All in the back.
Good.
You like that?
That's our new rule. How many parking spaces?
We would like some parking in the front.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. We don't have requests.
Watch my head explode.
No bottleneck in the driveway.
No, there's enough space for cars to safely get in and out the way it's designed right now.
Is there anyone here to speak on Pleasantville Road? I know I asked that before. Not seeing anyone. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we can discuss. Okay. Yeah, it was a beauty parlor, right?
Yes, yes, it was.
Yeah.
I used to go there with my mother years ago. Showing my age.
But there was residential use downstairs based
Yes.
on the actual, the way it was used.
I think it was used as the person who lived there had basically like a beauty salon chair. It wasn't all like a.
Yeah, it
the
wasn't.
First floor wasn't all.
No, it wasn't like your prototypical salon where you have a reception desk and chairs. I mean, it really was a home.
It was like they had a beauty salon chair in like the living room.
Basically.
So I have my computer downstairs with the home business.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a home-based business.
All right, you think you can get your return on your investment by making it 2 apartments?
Yes, ma'am.
We have a great town here.
Oh, I've lived there my whole life.
Any questions on the board? If we do this, this will be a unique situation.
Two
We have
use
never
variances.
Two in one
done
night?
two use
I know,
variances in one
I
night.
know.
I make the motion.
Do I have a motion to approve the use variance, because I think they did, I think they went through their numbers. I think
They have met,
answered all four questions.
they have met all the factors, yes.
We've had this happen to us before in that particular neighborhood too, and we've asked the person to go out and see if they can find some business, and they, in the one particular situation, they did. But they were much more closer to the commercial, real commercial, not the thing. So.
I mean, parking is really the big issue there. That's the issue, because you can't, if you can't have places for your customers and or your people, or your staff to park, it doesn't work.
Especially if you have apartment upstairs, if you rent, that's already 2 spots that's taken, and you only have like 2 spots left in your business downstairs. So do I have a motion to approve a use variance? I have to say it like that because we so rarely do it. A use variance for this particular property,
17
only.
Pleasantville Road, correct.
Yes.
I so move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, do a good job, sir.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn.
And he's not gonna need a variance to work on the inside.
You're not gonna move the walls or anything?
Not at all. Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. ZBA 1719, 36 Water Street.
Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, members of the board, welcome to the newest members. My name is Nick Stolatis. I'm here with my brother Peter. We're the members of Plateau Associates. We're also joined by our attorney, Paul Stone. Our presentation today is to appeal the Historic Preservation Commission's denial of a certificate of appropriateness for the removal of the last portions of the former Brandreth Pill Factory at 36 North Water Street. We submit there are 4 distinct reasons why the HPC was wrong in not issuing a certificate consistent with the terms set by other boards and the State Historic Preservation Organization, SHPO. They are: 1, the primacy of the demolition permit; 2, the position is inconsistent with other boards and SHPO; 3, it's an unsafe structure; and 4, the hardship created. I'll present each point and welcome questions if more information or clarification is needed. First point, as you all may be aware, in 2008, Plateau had applied for...
Do we have any pictures?
I'm about to, there we are.
Okay.
There you go. I was trying to
If
get
it's only
it right.
words, we have the words in front of us. Okay,
Go ahead, sorry.
Right, go ahead.
In 2008, Plateau had applied for and received approval of a demolition permit for the structure present at 36 North Water Street at that time. Plateau agreed not to initiate the demolition while its application to develop the site as a project called Hidden Cove was on the planning board's agenda. In 2012, the Historic Preservation Commission, acting on its own initiative, recommended that the structure be designated a local landmark. During its deliberations, the HPC ignored the demolition permit and written notices by the building department that the premises were unsafe. The HPC also declined to consider the expert evidence submitted by Plateau showing the hardship such a designation would create, especially since the planning board had already refused to consider an adaptive reuse of the building. Simply stated, the property had not been commercially used for decades and could not be economically repaired or restored. This was the same as when Plateau purchased the property in 2001. In September 2014, the planning board unilaterally removed the Hidden Cove application from its agenda. And in February of 2015, the building department began issuing a series of over 40 violation notices on consecutive days for supposed problems such as leaky windows, this for a vacant structure. These are petty allegations that did not apply to uninhabited buildings. in order to cure and dispose of these unwarranted notices. The village code, then in effect, section 162-38, allowed an owner to simply demolish the structure. After providing advance notice to the village, Plateau exercised its rights under the demolition permit and began clearing the site on April 14th of 2015. The work would have been completed but for the issuance of a stop work order that same day by Building Inspector Al Sirocco, who falsely claimed that there was no demolition permit. Ultimately, the village relented and acknowledged the validity of the demo permit, as stated above, such that Plateau was able to complete most of the work in 2016. Based on this acknowledgement by the village, it is Plateau's position that it still possesses the right to remove the remaining 2 minor structures on site, the mill's small office component and the blacksmith shed. They were clearly identified as items to be removed in Plateau's application for the demolition permits filed in 2008. Despite this, in early 2016, a newly appointed village planner, Lynn Brooks Avney, wrote a letter where she concluded that the demolition permit covered only the factory component. This wholly contradicted the schematic plan that was part of the application, and the village has never produced any evidence to validate her conclusion. This has caused further delay and complications, including the addition of several conditions in the approved site plan pertaining to the ultimate disposition of the remaining structure, which would not have been needed at all if the demolition had not been improperly interfered with in 2015 and 2016. As the demolition permit issued in 2008 applies to the remaining structures, it is unnecessary for a certificate to be issued, or at worst, that the certificate be issued acknowledging that removal is appropriate. Point 2. Even if the HPC had the right to act despite the existence of the demolition permit and applicable village codes, its refusal is inconsistent with determinations by others. After consideration of all comments, including those presented by the HPC, the Planning Board and SHPO effectively required only that elements of the office component be salvaged for use in a pavilion to be built by Plateau. The imposition of additional conditions above those set by the Planning Board is unwarranted and unjustified. So the refusal of the HPC frustrates and prevents the rulings by other bodies to be carried out. This is wrong, and a certificate should be issued compliant with the requirements of the approved site plan. Point 3. The structures are unsafe and fit within Village Code Section 270-25K1, which permits the demolition of a structure that has been identified as unsafe by the building department, notwithstanding any landmark designation that structure may have, and without any requirement to involve the Historic Preservation Commission. The building department has issued notices claiming the structures on the site to be unsafe, and established the HPC's lack of jurisdiction when it ultimately permitted the demolition of the factory portion. Accordingly, the HPC should have acknowledged its lack of jurisdiction or issued a certificate of appropriateness to recognize the reality of the situation concerning the unsafe status of the structures. Point 4. Hardship to Plateau is manifest. The unjustified actions to exclude the 2 remaining structures has caused more delay and great expense. It is clear that continuing the 2 structures on the site will prevent development and impose extraordinary hardship. If the HPC had jurisdiction in this matter, its refusal to issue the certificate effectively overrides the approved site plan and seeker and renders the property worthless or close to it. In conclusion, we are respectfully asking you to confirm that the HPC has no jurisdiction in this matter, such that no further action is required. or to reverse the HPC's decision and to issue a certificate of appropriateness without any conditions other than those as set forth in the planning board and set forth by SHPO. We trust you will reach this fair, reasonable, logical, and ethical conclusion to resolve a situation which has gone on far too long. I want to thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm available for any questions.
I think we'd like to, I think we need to hear from anyone that wants to. Did you want to speak, sir, or?
No, I'm Plateau's attorney.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
I know that you're Plateau's.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, no,
You
I'm
have a
happy
tie
to
on,
answer any.
Okay, so I think what we're going to do now is we're going to hear from anyone that wants to speak on this. I want to remind people, if you came in late, that we're going to have a 3-minute, this has been a very long meeting for us, and we're going to have a 3-minute, just come and state your approval or your disapproval or your being in the middle, one at a time. Please give your name, your address, and understand that you are, this is a quasi-judicial.
This is what?
This is quasi-judicial, and you're under, and you can be charged with perjury if you do not tell the truth.
Okay. My name is Jerry Wonderlick. I live at 8 North Water Street. I'm simply going to read I asked a cousin of mine, Gaines Brandreth, who is a former MP in the British Parliament and a well-known writer and TV man, to make a comment. So he wrote me a letter. I think he sent you a copy. But okay, so let me just read it to you. My name is Giles Brandreth. I'm a direct descendant of Dr. Benjamin Brandreth, the founder of the Brandreth Pill business that played such a significant part of the story of the beautiful town of Austin, as you know. My great-grandfather was a son of Dr. Brandreth, who was sent back to Britain to run the European end of the Brandreth Pill business. As you know, Dr. Brandreth was a New York State senator. He had been a British member of Parliament and a member of the British government. I am also an author, a broadcaster. I have featured Austin in documentaries I have made for the BBC about Dr. Brandreth. Dr. Brandreth was a significant figure in the history of Austin, in the history of patent medicines, in the history of advertising, in the culture of late 19th century America, mentioned in Moby Dick, admired by P.T. Barnum, and the reason I'm writing you now is simply to add my voice from this side of the Atlantic to voices nearer home that are urging you to do whatever you can to retain the historic messages of Dr. Brandreth's work and world by protecting and ensuring the future of the Brandreth office building. So much of the Brandreth heritage has already gone. To lose the last landmark would be to lose the last significant and tangible link with this fascinating figure and with the lives and the contribution of so many who worked in the Brandreth factory and for the Brandreth business over so many years. Of course, Austin needs to be as modern as tomorrow, but I know from my visits to your wonderful town that it has a lot of time too for yesterday. To understand who we are and to understand who we are and where we're going, we need to know where we came from. And Austin, the Brandreth office building helps us do just that. I would be grateful if you could share this message with the Austin Zoning Board in the run-up to your meeting on 10th of September. Giles Brandreth.
Thank you, sir. I want to remind everyone that's coming up to speak that we want you to speak on what is before the zoning board. Thank you for the history, sir.
Okay.
And now that we've heard the history, we want you to speak on the issue that is before the board, which is the whether, excuse me, sir?
It's the appeal from...
The appeal from, again, yeah, right.
My name is John Van Steen. I'm at 78 South Highland Avenue here in Ossining. I have a 4-page letter which will not fit in 3 minutes, so I'll...
I think we have that letter, though.
Okay, statements of the community, say Bob.
Did we get a copy of that? We have a stack of them.
It's dated September 1st, so you may not have.
Oh, okay.
That one, probably not, no.
So, the U.S. Army statements of the committee to save Bob, and I'll abbreviate past a bit of a history and background information. But the U.S. Army Corps agency's jurisdictional approval is particularly needed because Plateau proposes to change the course of the stream that ran beneath Bob to complete its new apartment complex. This stream was channeled by Dr. Benjamin Brandreth, the founder of the Brandreth Pillworks, who placed it under the building with a water wheel to power. It's close to and spills out onto the tidal and navigable Hudson River, and it is officially under the protection of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In this regard, the above-mentioned USACE oversees the permitting process and the 106 review process. The former and latter are integral components of the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. Section 106 of the NHPA requires USACE to identify, analyze, and assess any actions that may in some way affect this historic waterway, river, and historical buildings near it. The permitting process, among other things, requires public hearings where the comments and concerns of private individuals, businesses, and advocacy organizations are heard and considered before judgment is rendered. Under the Section 2, under the authority of the Municipal Home Rule Law and the Waterfront Revitalization and Coastal Resources Act of the State of New York, Article 42 of the Executive Law, established in 1991, its own waterfront revitalization program. The purpose of this law is to implement consistency review regulations and procedures for the Village of Ossing's local waterfront revitalization program. B, provide agencies of the Village of Ossining with a framework to consider the policies and purposes contained in the LWRP when reviewing private applications for actions or direct agency actions located within the LWRP boundaries, and lastly, to assure that proposed private and direct actions are consistent with said policies and purposes of the LWRP. And more to the point of historic preservation, this LWRP also makes specific mention of the historic Brandreth Pill Factory in its section entitled The Northern Waterfront. Furthermore, it includes language from the New York State Historic and Scenic Resources Policies, RE, the Coastal Area Policies number 23. It states that its intent of this policy is to protect, enhance, and restore structures, districts, areas, or sites that are of significance. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Saved by the bell.
I just want to make one point. When we did the variance, we did do variances for this particular development, and part of it was requirement that they get all their ducks in the row as far as the Army Corps of Engineers and Metro North. So that part, again, what we're here tonight for specifically is the office building.
Right.
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 But thank you.
Okay, but does that also fall under the Section 106 review in the Army Corps of Engineers?
John, the issue here is just the appeal.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mark Fry. I recently became resident of the Village of Ossining. I live at 36 South Island Avenue, and not far from at the Squire House, which is also listed on the National Register. I'm a professional land use planner, and I was involved in the Lincoln School project here, where we converted Lincoln School into 13 condominiums built in 18.
You're using your 13. You're using your 13.
Okay, good. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was about to start my timer.
No, your timer started.
Okay, good. Thank you. But I thought, so I've been familiar with this property for a long, long time. I was asked to do two things tonight. I wanted to check with you, Madam Chair. Miguel Hernandez asked me to read this into the record, but may I do that as a separate issue?
No, what you can do is give it to the clerk, and she will make sure it's in the record.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You don't have to read it
have a
into the
copy
record.
already in the file.
And you do, okay, good. I thought I would, I get into, I've prepared for this board, this CBA, appeared boards all over, but I wanted to comment on Mr. Stone's letter, which was attached to the application. I will contradict the assertions of Mr. Stone with my apologies. As to the demolition permit that we've been discussing, it was read into the record at the HPC hearing just about a month ago, back on July 1st, actually. It clearly specifies that the demolition permit was for a single structure, 3 stories tall, comprising 30,000 square feet. It did not include the other structures on the property, and it did not include the Brandreth office building. There was indeed a sketch with that permit. It did not include this building. There is no doubt about it. In the first paragraph on page 2, Mr. Stone asserts that the Historic Preservation Commission had no jurisdiction here because this building wasn't listed on the local register until 2012. As you well know, the entire complex was listed in 1979. The Historic Preservation Commission derived its authority under the listing on the National Register and the State Register of all of the buildings on the property in 1979. In your Historic Preservation Guide, which I sent to the board, it's interesting that Ms. Cheatham, Ms. Donnelly, Mr. Wunderlich, Eric Schatz, there are 5 or 6 people in this room who could be congratulated for putting that guide together. So you're familiar with that building and the fact that it's been listed since '79. There is no question that the HPC looked at all the evidence before it and reached a well-reasoned decision. They carefully studied the entire record. There was nothing arbitrary nor capricious about it. There are several examples here. They talk about reducing the value to 0.
I let you go a little bit over because you used some introduction time.
One more line?
One more line, that's it.
There are 3 successful projects in Ossining that have successfully incorporated historic structures. And this could be a win-win, like Avalon, like Hudson Steps. Thank you so much.
Is anyone else here to speak?
May I rebut Mr. Fry's presentation briefly?
Well, you have the same 3 minutes then.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, Ms. Donald, this is about nullification, okay? What the Housing HPC did was effectively nullify many years of work. I've been the Stellatis' attorney for over 18 years. This project has been on the board, has had ups and downs, has had rejections, has had problems for 12, 13, 14 years before the various boards. It's been approved, the site plan was approved, you granted variances, and they made reasonable provisions for what was to happen. There's going to be a pavilion built. There will be a preservation at the site. What happened at the HPC was an aberration, okay? They did not go and carefully discern what needed to be done or what should be done, what was appropriate. They just said, you're not doing anything, okay? So it really is tantamount to a seizure of their property, okay? It usurps the authority of other boards, it usurps what they did, it supersedes the testimony given before those boards and the reasoned deliberations by those boards, and it really should not apply. With all due respect to Mr. Fry, I litigated the demolition permit. I was in the village court. We have the diagram here that was submitted with the application showing that the office building was to be demolished. The project would have been stopped, would have been completed, would have been cleared, but for outside interference. There were 5 different rounds of litigation in the village court, the justice court, 5 different waves of violations against the Plateau Associates. The village did not prevail on a single one of them, okay? So there have been many delays, there have been many things that have been done to delay this project. Our imploration to you is don't delay it. Either say that the demolition permit has primacy here and that should control, it does apply to this building, or simply overrule what the HPC did and give them a certificate of appropriateness, and that they should comply with the site plan and comply with SHPO, which should suffice, which should be appropriate and safeguard the legacy of the site. There's going to be a pavilion built. There's been plenty of input about that, and that's the appropriate resolution and what we ask you respectfully to do tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here to speak on this? Okay, so I would add, this is
May I
really a
rebut?
public hearing. Okay.
I'm sure the answer is no, but may I rebuttal?
No, no. You were correct in your answer. One of the things that, I'm gonna start, because I've been part of this for a long, long time. One of the things that you should never do is kick back like that, you know. We get it, you have to come in and you have to tell us why you should get this, why we should reverse this. Just be kind, that's all I'm saying. One of the things that you did bring up is that you would like to see it go back to what the planning board, Board of Architectural Review and SHPO told you the
The planning board and SHPO have
Yes.
set forth conditions that Plateau must meet as part of its development program.
Have you?
Board of Architectural Review has not come into play yet
Okay.
because we don't have
Have
construction
you
drawings.
seen the document that the historical groups voted
Yes.
on?
Yes, we have.
Do you have any issues with the,
With the entire document, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have to tell you that as a professional,
yes,
it was irresponsible, illogical, and certainly exposes Plateau to unnecessary charges. For example, they wanted us to retain the remnant of the mill until we were ready to actually started our foundation work. Yet they wanted us to spend money to preserve the remnant of the mill, which would be demolished at the end of the day. And we have promised to salvage what elements that we could salvage and put them into the pavilion for display. These delays, the materials are deteriorating every day. They've been deteriorating for 15 years. Quite honestly, we spent 5 years, almost a full 5 years, and millions of dollars attempting to adaptively reuse the mill. And there was not a single person who has spoken in opposition to our Hidden Code program that ever presented themselves in support of the adaptive reuse.
so had they approved this at their meeting, you would have to agree to this.
No, actually, the material was illogical, was inconsistent, and quite frankly, we retained our right to oppose and reject the jurisdiction of the HPC based on the materials that we've already provided. And
If we
including,
were to reverse their decision,
Mhm.
then we would be approving this document.
that's one alternative that this board can
Right.
take. The
And
other
then what
alternative-
would your next step be?
The next step would be to file and complete our demolition permit and pursue that angle absent the jurisdiction of the HPC.
No.
Yes.
You're not listening. You said you read this document.
Correct.
This is the resolution that they voted on.
That's correct.
It's very detailed.
Excessively so,
Okay.
yes.
Again, be careful. You get yourself, you know, you don't want to put yourself in a deeper
I-
hole than, you know.
I understand.
Okay, so
Ms.
this is very detailed.
Correct.
I actually had one exception to it that I wanted to even make it, probably you would find even more,
Mhm.
you would object to it even more. So if they had approved this, would you have followed it?
Honestly, we would not have. It was hot.
Why are we here?
We're here because, quite frankly and very honestly, we were asked to allow the HPC to dot its i's and cross its t's. There was a lot of emotion on the HPC standpoint that.
We get that.
You've heard that.
We get that.
And we were trying to collaborate and move the process forward.
So now you're in front of the zoning board
Correct.
with the document, asking us to reverse this.
No, we're asking you to reverse the
Sir?
HPC's.
Could you have your attorney come up? Didn't you say that was one of the possible
To-
options?
Well, I believe, Madam Chair, that I asked that you reverse it and simply adopt a certificate of appropriateness which adopted the planning board requirements and SHPO's requirements, that these are.
So what if you were a group of volunteers, not us, but a group of volunteers that had historical preservation on their mind, and you were fighting this with how it was written, what do you plan on keeping? one of those little crosses in the white, the little blue cross, and say that's what we're gonna keep for the.
Well, it's been all detailed, but Mr. Stellatis was trying to make the point that they were invited to appear before the HPC to simply dot some i's and cross some t's. And what they did was prepare a resolution, a 6-page resolution requiring photographs. They can't take a step, they can't do anything without someone second guessing what's going on. The project has taken so many years now that this seems to be another impediment. It's another stumbling block being thrown in the way of the project, as opposed to logical and fair safeguards to preserve and to integrate these components into the pavilion.
So had they approved that, say the vote was reversed, what would you have done?
We might have appealed to this board for,
So you would want us to?
well, to modify, well, but because the predicate for going there was simply to comply. Mr. Kahan told Plateau to go there to simply dot some i's and cross some t's, and they left. Well, and then before they came into the meeting, they were presented with a 6-page resolution, which included, again, oversight, intrusion by all sorts of people, which is unnecessary. The planning board has already made provisions to talk about a pavilion, and we have the SHPO guidance about that also. So if anything, Ms. Donnelly, that certainly needs to be streamlined, it certainly needs to be modified, what they were trying to do, because it's only going to impede the progress. We're already wasting time on the approvals by the planning board and the zoning board. We're going to have to come back here for an extension of those approvals, because this is burning up more time. It just goes on and on and on. So we're trying to get to a prudent and fair resolution which preserves the components, which puts them in the pavilion, but without undue influence, undue interference. That's the bottom line.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Is it okay if we ask the building department to at least provide us with, at some point, not today, the actual demolition permits? Because that's some part of it that we've not really seen.
Is it, but did they go to court and it was the?
We can do that. I should just point out, that's actually not the appeal.
Right.
The appeal is simply the denial of the certificate of appropriateness.
Of a certificate of
Can I
appropriateness.
talk? Can I address?
Now,
Why don't
excuse
you give me
excuse
2 minutes?
Okay. We have to be,
apologies.
we're gonna be respectful. I have never, ever used this. I will use it if I need to.
What I was trying to say, I know you wish to correct me, but I just want to make it clear. The appeal before you is the denial of a certificate of appropriateness. And what you consider are the documents that were before the HPC at the time they denied it. If you want to see the demo permit or whatever, you're more than welcome to. But again, the limited issue before you now is essentially, do you wish to reverse, modify, or essentially uphold what the HPC did? That's what's before you.
That's all that's before us.
That's all that's before you.
So for us to, that's where I got a little, that's where I thought you were getting a little carried away at the beginning little talk. Because I'm saying, why are you doing this, right now? Because to be honest with you, you know what I would add to that? I would add that you must have the pavilion done before you get your C of O. This thing gives you 12 months. And I said, that I would say, because then now I don't think you would ever do it. So what's to lead this board or that, the historical board to think that this pavilion will even be built? Or it won't be just like, like one of those little signs that you get in a park, where it says,
Well, that's what the planning board resolution, which includes 48 separate conditions, which others have opined to be quite a number, includes at number 38B that they must erect the open air pavilion. It's already provided for by the planning board.
Okay.
This is redundancy. This is excess layering. This is more interference.
But do you understand what our council is telling us? That this is what we walked into tonight. We were here to uphold their denial, reverse their denial, and then that was in essence do nothing. It would be to uphold, right?
I don't want to interrupt, but Mr. Kahan said, or modify.
Or modify.
That was his third
Yeah, but
alternative.
he knew
So
what,
we're
he knew
asking-
what I wanted to modify,
Well,
so, you know,
we're
we're
asking
not
for-
going in your direction.
I mean, if you're inclined to
Well,
look at,
what is the difference between the planning board's restrictions and this?
The HPC's program provides for the HPC to control and direct the activities in areas that, first of all, they wanted to have a monthly written report on a static building that would be 7 or 8 months, 10 months, 12 months before it would be demolished. They wanted the building to be protected against the elements for that period of time before it would be demolished. They wanted control over
Well, you know, we
several
do have an
consultants.
abandoned building, is it called an abandoned building law?
It's closed vacant.
Vacant building.
Vacant building law, which we have appealed that determination and have not heard anything yet. So 60 days have gone by, we haven't heard from the appeal board on that matter. It is a building that's under the demolition permit, and notwithstanding the false claim by a building inspector in 2015 on an official document, you said this is a semi-judicial process. We are here, we're trying to be working with the village, and we are constantly being ambushed and presented with situations to employ, a case in point from a personal standpoint. The HPC has been trying to get us to hire a consultant of their choice for a year plus. This consultant would offer no value to the process, but would be employed by us at our expense. We have spent $275,000 in escrow charges to consultants and lawyers in our pursuit of a approval, site plan approval. Other projects, similar projects, as Mr. Khan will verify, anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000. So $250,000 in additional consulting fees that we had to pay for a project that is no different than several other projects that has been scrutinized, excessively for a project that
The project has changed dramatically.
it has not. Madam Secretary, Madam Chair, I must tell you, the original project
The original project had apartments on the plateau.
was a
Was on the
multi-structure condominium project. When the planning board says, we will not approve your program, tear down that building and put up a 12-story high-rise for all we care, we're not going to approve your adaptive reuse. And we changed the program to a single structure.
The planning board told you to tear down the building.
Yes, Joe Clark in one of the meetings. That, Madam Chair, that is why, we are
Very,
here.
very careful.
no, look, may I make just one point also, is that the HPC knew about this project for years. They consulted with the planning board as our information. They could have given this input to the planning board. They could have done all of this a year or two before, okay? This is a last-minute attempt to exert undue influence over the project, to basically countermand what other boards are. It's a rogue board.
I wonder if I might just make
Yeah.
one point, Mr. Stone, and it's important.
Yes.
The site plan resolution has a specific provision that the
You have to make
applicant,
sure you're talking loud
that the
enough.
applicant will go to whatever board is necessary and obtain the approval from that board. That includes historic preservation. They went to historic preservation. I think to impugn the motives of the current members of the HPC is grossly, I'm going to finish, is inappropriate. These folks have tried very hard to get their stuff done, but what I want to make clear is the site plan is explicit in that regard. And I know you mentioned all the conditions, but what it talks about the pavilion is that the BAR ultimately has to approve what the pavilion looks like, but that there also has to be approval from whatever boards are required to give the approval, which would include HPC,
Not under 270-25K1.
You folks have filed with the HPC. You went for a certificate of appropriateness.
Mr. Kahan, I don't think it's necessary, no one's impugning their vote, no one's impugning, and we just think it's misguided. We understand there's an interest in preservation, and Plateau will take all the necessary steps to do whatever they can to preserve and to build the pavilion. The layers, though, of oversight, the layers of interference, though, I think are unnecessary and excessive. That's the point we want to make. There's no one is saying that there's a bad motive behind it, but it's just misguided.
I am still in shock, because I thought we were gonna walk in here and we were gonna say, we would have to decide whether we overrode them, their decision or not. And now it's completely, you don't even wanna do the whole thing. So that's, you know, and again, I read this, and yes, there's some places that it might be a little tiny bit overbearing. But, you know, I don't know what, you know, because I don't even think we have jurisdiction to do anything but override this or.
Well, it's an appeal, so effectively this board can determine, if the board wanted to grant the certificate of appropriateness, it can grant it, you know, really on any conditions that it wants to impose. I should point out, because I think it's something that Mr. Stone was saying, the site plan resolution does not deal with the preservation of the office building. That was always recognized as a responsibility ultimately of the HPC, if in fact that was the direction it was going to go. But this board, you know, it's clear. I mean, it's an appeal. So this board can determine what it wants to do. The resolution that was presented to the HPC included, as you're aware, as this board's aware, multiple conditions with regard to that. And it was rejected by the HPC. This board...
That's not enough.
For whatever reason, it was.
Yeah, for whatever
you know, you've had the minutes and you've had the video.
Yeah.
So, but that's essentially what's before this board. And as Mr. Stone has pointed out, it can be upheld, it can be reversed, it can be, you know, modified. But this is, you know, this is in a sense is sort of a template as to what was before them. It
Right.
relates. So that's where we are with that.
Madam Chair, I don't think we have enough information to modify.
I'm going to tell you, it's, yeah, I'm going to tell you, I think that one of the things that has to happen is, we're going to have to hold this over a month. Because, you know, if you're saying to us, change it, we're not going to change it on the fly here. We're not just going to give you, you know, a very loose skeleton that the planning board gave you, that, okay, build a pavilion. You know, it might be a happy medium between these two, but we can't do that. We're not gonna do that tonight. I know you probably have what you would like it to say, which is make a pavilion. You know, in all honesty, you know,
Well, again, our position was to have it conform to what the planning board wanted and what SHPO provided for about erecting the pavilion. They will use good faith efforts. They come here in good faith. They came in good faith to the HPC to hopefully address any reasonable concerns they had, and they ended up being pretty much sandbagged. So,
well, you would have said they were sandbagged if they had approved this, from what you're saying now tonight.
Well,
you would have said they were sandbagged because they rejected it, and you would have said they were sandbagged because they.
Well, at the last minute, I guess the resolution was brought up. I think Plateau felt they were going to go there and answer some questions.
So this isn't not. I want everyone to know this is not even a public hearing, because we don't have a public hearing on this particular issue right tonight. But what I can tell you we can do is we can address the SHPO and the planning board and this document, and you can come back, and it's another month, you know, and come back and give us your suggestions, and do not write on the piece of paper, build a pavilion, and, you know, because it won't fly, you know, so, and you send through our corporation council, you send a document ASAP we will ask for a work session with the historical board, and we'll take all the documents that the planning board has done, and the SHPO, and then we'll see if we can't come up with something that might take a little bit out of this, but it's not gonna be build a pavilion.
Understood, understood. We're looking for.
I think I'd also like to see a copy of the original demolition permit.
Yeah,
We'll get
we'll
you-
do that internally.
All of that will be got
Yeah.
and provided.
Will you include the diagrams? This-
Yeah.
I have them all.
Do you have? All right.
I got it.
Thank you.
So I would say to you guys, you're gonna be back on the agenda next month, okay, October. Is it October yet?
It's
No.
but it's,
It's only September.
but it's October, it's Monday, the 7th, next month, because Tuesday is, Yom
What,
Kippur.
it's the 15th?
It's the 15th? Oh, I apologize. It's a month later. It's a week later, not a month
Okay.
later. It's a week later.
Madam Chairman, may I
Yeah.
make one clarification? Not only the application, the demo permit, I think what we have produced and has been overlooked by everybody involved is the demolition application, in which we had the schematic that showed everything that was going to be demolished.
We are going to look at it all ourselves. You have to remember, we remember the demolition permit. So, okay, so we go back those many
Do you
years.
remember the application though?
Right, so we'll look at all, we're gonna look at the file, we're gonna sit in a room, we'll look at the file, we'll take care of it. All right? But, you know, we have to see what goes on, but this is not how I expected to end. But that's okay, because that's what we're here for.
Thank you for your consideration.
And I would be very careful with your variances. They've gotta be close to 6 months out now.
They've actually contacted us about getting that
Okay, because I
extended.
gotta,
We've been in touch.
okay.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
thank
ladies
I
and
wonder
gentlemen.
if I might be permitted also a quick clarification, Madam, quick clarification.
Mr. Fry,
No.
there's nothing further.
No. We have to
further.
take care of more business, okay?
Okay, fine, I'll
Okay,
send it
thanks.
to you.
You can send, email is a great
Okay.
tool,
Mhm,
okay?
Thank you.
I need a, welcome. She's used to it. I need a motion to accept the minutes, and again, this is a tough one, because we only have 2 of us that were here. Should we wait? Because we have resolutions.
You gotta sign the resolution.
Okay,
Got it.
so we're going to make an exception because we were a 3-member board, that you can join us on the minutes of the, what was the date?
July meeting.
July meeting, we didn't do August,
July 9th.
July 9th, and the resolution, the resolution, right?
Do I make a motion and I second
No, they
No, I
can
can
say. All those in favor?
But I mean, I just have a
Aye.
question, I mean,
Sure.
it's, since I wasn't a member at the time,
Yeah,
I mean, is it
Well,
appropriate?
technically let me say this, technically with regard to minutes, minutes are not required to be approved, they just have to be published. within
Okay,
2 weeks.
are you okay?
So,
Yes.
Okay, because I'm saying,
Oh, no.
whenever I have someone.
No, I know who that is.
Oh, okay, so anyway, so okay, you're.
No, I did watch the meeting, the
So,
last meeting.
you got it. Good.
So with that, I have a motion to adjourn this zoning board.
So moved.
So, thank you all for taking an extra long meeting tonight. It's almost 9:30, and this is very highly unusual for us.
And again, next meeting is the 15th
And
of October.
October 15th is the next meeting. Again, welcome back, Brian, welcome, Tony, and welcome, Marlene.
Thank you.
Thank you.